Right. All right. So here's what I wanted to do. I got to remember to keep looking at the camera. So obviously, hey, hope you're doing good. I presently am in the mighty state of Michigan, slightly north in Gaylord, and I'm with these two guys. So obviously, you know the score if you follow along with our wee world, right? By the way, this is just straight iPhone, okay? So excuse us for volume and all of that kind of stuff. We're not the Joe Rogan podcast, okay? But obviously, you know the score. When I go away, a lot of times I'm hitting the road with World Orphans. And these guys work for World Orphans. Now, I just wanted to, there's a song I have actually on my Grace record called Story. And one of the things that when you're driving along the road and we're always having these chats, we're always talking about like, it's just absolutely amazing. By the way, I'm sitting on the floor. So I am, because it's like trying to squeeze everyone in. And one of the things that we always talk about is like, isn't it amazing that how God writes stories on all of our lives? And we can keep going back and back and back and back. You know, if Adam and Eve hadn't done this, and this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, and so on and so on, right? So we can go back that far. But for us, in this journey, in our wee story, I have this, like, it's just this really cool moment that how God played the best game of chess, right? And we all came together in order to do this. So I was looking back, because dates can get a little bit blurry, but November 2006, I end up in a brothel in Southeast Asia, and I write this song, God of This City, okay? Now, it was Pete Comfort, big shout out, Comfy Man. It was Pete Comfort's birthday, and we end up in this bar, this brothel. There's people that are being sold all around us in the streets, and you know, it's just the entire fabric and DNA of Pattaya, Thailand, is built on prostitution. So we're there with our mission team from church, Christian Fellowship Church in Belfast, and the deal is we get to play for 2 hours, right? Now the bar owner has no idea who we are. All that she knew was that there's an Irish band, they're going to play for free, and they had a fan base in town, right? It was our mission team. So we just start worshiping away. Now, I was rooming with my really great buddy, PDK. We're having these conversations about where is God in the middle of all this? Whose responsibility is this? Why is this happening? So on and so on. So then that song is written and birthed in that brothel that night. Then fast forward a bit of time as well. Then that whole story of Chris Tomlin is in Belfast, and we've been singing it. Our lives were changed when we came back from that trip, because like once that switch is flicked, and this sense of like, we need to do something about this element of justice. Ezekiel 22:30 says that God looks around for someone that would breach the gap. And so what we saw was abuse. What we saw in our world was what was like, there still is abuse and hurt and pain, but not this. Never seen people being bought and sold in such an openly disgusting way, right? So come back and we're like, we need to do something about this. This changes the trajectory of your heart for why we make music, why we're doing what we're doing, why we're traveling. So in that place, it's like, okay, we actually need to put our money where our mouth is and make stuff happen, okay? How do we stop kids ending up in these environments where they feel like the best option is that they need to sell themselves, okay? And that then they're essentially trapped in this industry of modern day slavery that they can never really get out from. And so we have this period of time back home that's going on in our worlds. Chris Tomlin comes to Belfast. They hear the song as guitar player. It speaks into the passion world. Lou Giglio, all that stuff. Forgive me, I'm not name dropping. I do not know these guys. And they then start telling the story of the song. So doors begin to open. We begin to travel, and a whole bunch of different people playing. let's go to the States. There's festivals. They want to freaking give us free food, and we can drive 40-foot RVs down the road with no special driving license, right? It was absolutely class, right? So you hit the road, and away we go. We start doing what we do. Have an album by this time, which again is a story in itself, and it did what it did. So, Mike Krick and Aaron Pegg, then, what happens in your world that you have no idea of who I am or any of that? Krick.
Right. So that would have been 2000. APEG and I had been friends for a number of years, and I had asked APEG to go on this trip to Southeast Asia. This would have been in 2010.
And what APEG, what were you doing?
He was a photographer.
He was a photographer.
Yeah. Yep. So, and that was, I mean, not only did I want APEG to see and experience what World Orphans was doing, but in the same breath, use his gifts and abilities to really help our organization move forward and capture. He just takes incredible images and was super valuable on that trip. So, yeah, we went in, I think it was November, maybe December.
I think it was November.
November. 2010, and we visited the Philippines and Cambodia and Thailand and went into Burma even for a bit of time. And
So hold on, you went in November 2010.
correct.
We were there in November. Dude, I'm actually just thinking about it. Imagine. I need to check with Pete Comfy, and it'd be amazing to check this. Imagine it was the exact same date 4 years later.
That'd be something.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Otherwise, it's
Oh my goodness.
Otherwise, it's nothing.
Oh yeah, I know, but I'm just thinking
Might
about
be
that. That would be
something. Might
class.
something.
Yeah.
No. So but one of the moments on that trip that we go back to so often with APEG and Boydo here is walking street in Pattaya City, the same city he had written God of the City, walking by, what was the name of the brothel? The Climax
Bar. Now, tell people what Walking Street is like.
Walking Street, so I often describe Walking Street as a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. It is full of sex trafficking. It is full of male and female prostitutes. We were told of child prostitutes off the grid, but it's one of the darkest places I've ever been, and I actually felt like it took a few months of kind of mentally and emotionally and spiritually recovering after being there and seeing some of the darkness that we experienced and saw. But yeah, we spent some time on that street, just walking down and soaking in what we were seeing and trying to figure out what can we do to make a difference on the planet. And in the midst of this, went back to our hotel room and we were reading scripture, we were praying, we were, and APEG pulls out his iPhone 2.
Yeah,
I don't even
probably.
And hits play and the song that he plays, and you had heard of Aaron because it was, I think I had not, and specifically he didn't play Chris Tomlin's version. No, he played Boydo's version of God of the City over the city of Pattaya City, not knowing whatsoever where it was written, why it was written, where it came from, none of that. And
you'd APEG, you'd heard the song or not?
So I loved the spirit of worship you guys brought to Big Ticket. I figured the song was written about Dublin or something. I didn't know where you were from. I knew you were from Ireland.
And what a Big Ticket is what?
Music festival, Northern Michigan Music Festival.
Right here in town.
Yep.
Yeah.
You guys were playing at, and something about, I was taking photos, and something about the way you worship just made me put my camera down and want to worship, And so this song was on my playlist on my iPhone 1, and it just felt like hope over these circumstances. I did not know this song was about Pattaya, Thailand, and what's going on there, but it just felt right to play this out of our balcony, over that city and that beautiful creation that man has sort of really made nasty, with what we're doing there and what we're up to there.
Yeah, because Pattaya is on the coastline in Southeast Asia, and it is actually, it's a stunning area. It's beautiful, but it's unfortunately been used for evil rather than good.
Yeah.
And so yeah, playing that song over that city was one of those moments that I think we both remember really, really well. And we were with another gentleman there. His name is Paul, and it was a unique time for us to really reflect on, man, you are the God of the city. You are the king of these people. You're the Lord of this nation, and greater things are yet to come, and we believe in that. And so as you think through the lyrics of that song and you actually apply it outside of, Louis Giglio's Atlanta, and you put it into Pattaya City, and it's beautiful in any city, I suppose, but it just gave it all the more richness and meaning for us in that time period.
Yeah. So in Pattaya, like the industry there, I don't even want to call it that, but that's essentially what it is there. I mean, when you're on the plane and you're flying there, it feels like if you are a Westerner,
right, you're going there
you're either going there to try and end and be part of some sense of justice. And there's amazing organizations and ministries that are there, primarily championed by women, because a lot of the prostitutes there and the girls are obviously women. And so they'll sit with them, they'll build some sense of relationship with them, they'll help them do their hair and their makeup, and they obviously don't champion what is going on, but they just love on the people that are there. But it grew up during the Vietnam War, and that is when actually primarily British and US troops had their time off and their R&R, and so they go here, and then obviously when you have this lust meeting poverty, then this thing absolutely explodes into life. Okay, so yous have walked down the street November 2010, so 4 years after, and I'm going to dig in on this because how cool. We're talking about God writing stories. How cool would that be if it was like the same day that it was marked on, because I'm even thinking in the words, when you see dates in the Bible, they're all there for a reason. It's not just that it's just there for a, it's like it's specific for a reason. And
I think it's important too to point out, like, the trafficking industry there is, you think about it here, it's kind of in the dark, right? People are trying to keep it hidden and that sort of thing. And there it was lights and glamour. It didn't, the police were involved in it.
It was like a carnival.
It was a carnival, yeah. And there was menus. They'd hand you menus on the street of she'll do this for that, or 2 for 1, or stuff like that. Where
in supermarkets, like it's in the actual fabric. Like you're checking out at a supermarket where you're maybe buying something, and then with your receipt you're handed a flyer, because everyone tries to make money from the same thing, and it all comes into, it is a crazy
it was celebrated
world.
there.
Yeah,
right?
it is so obnoxiously in your face, and they bleach the streets. So it's such a party town. They bleach the streets in the morning. So, okay, so we then come back to you now come back to the States after that trip. Now at this point, you're a staff member with World Orphans.
Correct.
Pegg, you are there primarily in your role as
it's Mike Krick's friend.
Mike Krick's friend to take photos.
And a donor of the ministry, a believer in what the ministry was doing, for sure. Yep.
And essentially, what really quickly, what World Orphans is primary focus is, there's 153 million orphans. Though these numbers get absolutely staggering, but 153 million orphans in the world. And when we think orphan, we think like double orphan is a term that's used as well, where both parents are dead and or something's happened and this child is by themselves. Well, actually, the case is that over 80%, 85%, whatever it is, of these 153 million orphans have a living parent. And it all comes down to poverty. So because of poverty, a parent has to choose that, well, I've got 2 kids, I've got 3 children, I can only feed 1, I can only feed 2. And so then what happens is then they go, well, actually the best option is that they put them into an orphanage, okay? And then that child essentially becomes an orphan in that retrospect. So what World Orphans does is, let's go on the preventative side. So let's go back a few steps and let's keep that family unit together as much as possible. If there is two parents and they're really, really struggling, then let's help them. And that is all delivered, or if it's a single mom or whatever that may be, let's keep that family unit together so therefore kids do not end up in places like orphanages, which sadly are not safe places, okay? Or they might end up on the streets. And then essentially from that, people can be trafficked and moved around the world. And they say it's easier to traffic people now than it is to traffic drugs, which is staggering. So World Orphans through local churches. So we're not like, it's not like these guys are going in, we're just building big centers or whatever. Like, what we do is they partner North American churches or whoever that may be with a church in a developing world that are already have a passion and a drive to see their communities changed, to see families stay together, and they build a relationship between those two churches. There's obviously a bit of finance involved, and then that is spread wide through lots of different avenues and mediums. And so it's really important. It's about keeping the family unit together. We believe as Christians that that was God's original design for family. And I know that in today's world, there is lots of attacks on family values, but that at core is extremely precious to us. So you have done that. You're now back in the States. What happens?
Right. So we were actually in APEG, just mentioned Big Ticket Festival, which is where he heard Blue Tree and Aaron Boyd for the first time. And that's where he got introduced to God of the City. It was after we got back from that trip, though, that I did a little more digging into the song, because it's the first time I think I'd heard it. And somehow we realized, oh my goodness, this guy, Aaron Boyd from Belfast, Northern Ireland, wrote this song. He wrote it in Pattaya City, and there's some YouTube videos out there that in the midst of doing some digging in, we found the story behind the song, and Chris Tomlin had told the story, and then we did a little bit of research on Aaron, and come to find out he's going to be back at Big Ticket that following year, and World Orphans was partnering with Big Ticket. We had been doing a couple of experience tents to kind of give people a better grasp of who we are and what we do and what the world of an orphan might look like, and what the world of even a trafficked child in orphans would be considered, the most vulnerable of people on the planet, and so more susceptible likely to child trafficking. And so trying to communicate that via our experience tents. And so that's where, and I think I might have been on the board at a Big Ticket Festival at the time, and so had access to get backstage, and that's where we met, right, for the first time. Was hey, I want to sit down with you and connect with you, because the passion that we had experienced in Pattaya City and the heartbreak and the hard stuff we saw, we knew that Aaron had seen it, and we thought, man, what better way to really communicate to the masses than having somebody that has a platform that wants to use that platform to make a difference on the planet. And although we didn't know that at the time, it was clear after meeting with Aaron that he really wanted to use the platform that God had given him to make a difference in the world. And so, man, we've been going at it now we were just thinking about this in that beautiful Jeep that we have right now, that tight rental.
Oh, it's awful.
We were just thinking about that
problem.
on the way. It's probably been over 8 years, though, that we've been doing ministry together. It started with a trip to Haiti, and then we did a tour in the spring of 2014. And outside of a miserable COVID stretch, we've been going at it pretty nonstop.
Yeah. So this is really cool. So then, APEG, you come back. By the way, Aaron Pegg. Me and him have the best first name ever invented. I'm just saying. High priest. Anyway, so you come back, and then what happens, APEG, with your journey? So remember, overarching thing in all of this is story, okay? God writes the best stories. What happens in your world and your adventures and your story with World Orphans?
I would say World Orphans, I went into teaming up with World Orphans thinking I was going to help kids. I was stoked. I was like, I can help kids. I can go and help these kids. And I came back from these trips, taking photos, listening to stories, sitting in homes, sharing, being offered coffee and food, and hearing these stories of having to give up their children because they couldn't afford to keep their children, and then sometimes going back and taking their child back from the orphanage because now they had a sustainable job through World Orphans. I heard all these stories. I came home from, I think I've been in 7 different countries now with World Orphans. I come home and I'm like, these kids helped me.
Wow.
You know, it was a big switch, and I'm just very thankful.
And then you are now a board member. Like,
Yeah.
you're Krick's boss. Like, awkward. So, but how did that come about?
Man, so a lot of people call it the WO fam, the World Orphans family, and it feels like that. It's like, I'm
that
not
way?
your typical,
Whoa, fam.
W-O.
Whoa, fam.
I'm not your typical businessman, but I love praying and I love this ministry. And so those guys said, we'd love to have kind of a different creative perspective on the board. So
Yeah, like, talk about a story. So, we made a big ticket, and then what's the gap? So then, essentially, my first time in a Panera Bread was in Castle Rock,
Yeah, Colorado.
Colorado. I was out, and it was just before I was getting on a flight, and we met really early in the morning, didn't we?
Right.
I'd never been to a Panera Bread before, and so we're like, I don't know, like, it's like, as soon as Panera Bread's open, so whatever time that was, we drive to get to this place. We've got a limited time window, and then what was it that happened? We got there early,
Right.
and there was me and another guy, and we're absolutely busted. So we cracked the seats back, and we're just wiped out in the car. And then yous arrived, didn't you?
Yeah.
You,
Me and Scotty V.
Scotty Vare,
Yeah.
Scott Vare is the CEO, absolute legend, and yous arrived slightly late, and then
maybe 5 minutes late, right? We pull in at
25 minutes
7:05.
late, 30 minutes
There's
late.
one other vehicle in the parking lot, and there's nobody in the vehicle.
They
At
look and
least
they don't
we
see
thought.
anyone.
And we got inside, and we're like, "Oh man, they're not here." So we
You
sit
thought we'd
around,
stood
get
you
our
up.
coffee, get our breakfast, and then
But we have the seats down in the car, and we're absolutely wiped out of sleep, and then we
Right.
wake up and like, what? And so we run in, and it
looking
was
homeless. It's great.
I always look homeless, but anyway, it's like, whatever. We're beezer, absolutely beezer, full beezer. And we just have this conversation, don't we, where it was like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And again, then in our world, in our family, it was like, we were deeply desiring to just do what we do alongside an organization that it's not a business transaction, because sadly that exists. It's people's jobs to negotiate things, and that could be for a whole lot. I'm not get off on that, but there's a lot of stuff that I've seen that I don't like that happens, and so we wanted to find an organization that really would become family and deeply like World Orphans, like you guys, like outside of the World Orphans, like you're some of the greatest human beings on earth, and I count you as deep friends, like genuinely. And that has grown out of that, and that's been an answer to that prayer. And even in the model, in the sense where it's for us back home, it doesn't really happen that much, but all the World Orphan staff, they all raise their own support. And so they'll go to friends and be like, this is what we're going to do. This is this, you need $50 a month, $20 a month, whatever. And then essentially then that means that the throughput of the organization is extremely high, because you don't have loads and loads of overheads. Now, I know there's loads of debates about that, but I like that. And there's an integrity where when we stand in front of people and we try and raise support there are in-country staff, and a lot of what we do is you cannot ask Haitians to raise support of other Haitians. It's just not going to work. So that's what we do. When we do play in churches or home events or whatever it looks like, a lot of the times that's what we're raising finance for. And it's an absolute joy, because those are the people that are on the ground working alongside all the pastors, making sure everything is absolutely legit and everything lands where it needs to land. And so we sat, didn't we, and we had this conversation. What was it? How do we do this? And I go, I love leading worship. I love helping people meet Jesus. and whatever way that looks, through stories, through songs. So I'll do that, and then you guys, you tell the world about what the church, what the bride of Christ is already doing in these dark areas. We connect the dots. Remember Ezekiel 22:30, God looks around for someone that would breach the gap. So here's our world, here's their world. Let's be those people in the middle. And we can do this actually, can't we? We can do this on an everyday basis. It doesn't have to be churches across the world. It can be your neighbor, where it's like, I want to be someone that stands in the gap between you and essentially salvation, and I want to help, be that conduit where it's like I let you see what the gospel actually looks like. So we have this chat, and then it's like, how do we do this? And then our first tour, wasn't it? Krick had booked a load of stuff. I got my guys. I then had ended up in Newfoundland with Mike Love, big love, Mike Love, YC Newfoundland. I'd met the Informants. Boys, if any of you are watching this, we love you guys to bits. Like, we've had so many adventures. Informants is a band from Newfoundland, and we met and we hung out. And there's people that you meet, and now they're all great musicians, but there's people that you meet that are great musicians, and sadly at times they're not really nice people. And I know it sounds judgmental, but whatever. But these guys were just the absolute heroes. And we were out like in someone's back garden, like throwing knives and all. It was just brilliant. We had a load of fun, and they were great. And you were away then organising our first tour. Mm-hmm. And this was your first time ever doing something like that. Yeah. And so it was real grassroots. We were just building this from the ground up. And there was an events department of World Orphans at that time?
No.
So we just created an events department.
Yeah. Scott trusted me to do it, which is mind blowing. But yeah, we figured it out.
Which is hilarious. So again, then even at that, because we even think, anyway, it doesn't matter. There's too much stuff going through my head. So I got my guys, Petey Burton, love you, Dusty Rag. I can't even remember who else was on that trip.
Oh, guy, Tim Dolloway.
Tim Dolloway, yes, Dolloway, love you, brother. Yeah. And then I'd phoned you and I'd said, I've met these guys. It would be amazing to have these guys on this tour. And they literally borrowed one of the guys' mom's car and drove from Newfoundland,
which is the furthest east you can get in North America, way up in Canada.
They drove from there like 3 days. Yeah. And where was the first place?
Our first event was in it was in the Detroit area, just Canton, Plymouth, Canton, Michigan. Yeah.
And then out of that, I mean, talk about God writing stories as well. Like, I mean, we could we'll maybe do that at another time, actually. But like, God just wrote so many stories in our lives together, and then in theirs as this thing began to unfold. And I absolutely love that. And I know if you've made it this far, we're pushing 30 minutes here, but I just wanted to be intentional with actually like making sure you understand that when you kind of follow my world, me and Jill and our wee family and what we do with kind of the little that God we have in our hands, and dare to believe that in your world that God wants to write stories. Ours looks like this, but He wants to write stories in your world. And my favorite Bible verse is Colossians 3:3, and it says, "For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God." And we, I suppose you don't really like the cold, but we love adventures. Like, we end up, if we have a couple of days off, we end up going up north and go ice climbing and go through the woods.
I don't like cold adventures. Let's be really clear.
So maybe like an adventure to like Cabo on a beach. Yeah. You know what I mean? Something like that. That's more your adventure. But we love adventures, and I just think that verse, for you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. And the beauty in this is that the more that we throw our lives into the kingdom, the more we give of ourselves to what the Lord wants to do, and the more we behold Him, right? The more we worship Him and we put Him in His place, then essentially there is this automatic download where your life begins to unfold, and this adventure that is hidden with Christ in God begins to unfold.
Yeah.
And so probably out of that, it's like, if I could give you an encouragement, I'm going to give these guys a second to think, to leave you with a final encouragement. That's what I would say, is that the more that we lift Jesus and the more that we follow him, the more that we try to become more like him in rest and in love, and the more those laws are written on our hearts, no longer in stone, then the more your adventure in the kingdom begins to unfold. Papa Krick,
Yeah.
any wise words?
I was just thinking, one of the things that got me into full-time ministry was a quote I heard a number of years ago. It's called, or the quote goes, "There is one thing in life I fear more than failure, and that is being successful in something that doesn't count." And for me, it revolutionized what I was going to do and why I was going to do it and everything else. But the older I've gotten, the more I realized, if we're followers of Jesus, everything we do should count. Whether we're a business owner, a plumber, if I'm in full-time occupational ministry, but we're all in full-time ministry.
Come on.
And so
Come on.
When you think about what we do and does it count, if it's for the kingdom, and we often talk about worship and justice, loving God is worship, loving others is justice, and our tours are really centered around that. And these things count, they matter. And it doesn't matter necessarily what we do from an occupational standpoint. We're all in full-time ministry, and we all can make a difference for the kingdom.
Here, say that one more time, that a bit of pressure to make sure you get it right.
Sure. There's one thing in life I fear more than failure, and that is being successful in something that does not count.
Wow.
It's good.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's the church.
The church. Mike, we did this video that played everywhere, and Mike come off with this great line, and we always he's just like, it's a beautiful thing. The church is a beautiful thing. So dramatic. Hey, Peg.
I would just say, I'm 42 years young, similar to these guys. Krick's much older. I would say I've seen God cross paths.
Wiser. I'm going to say wiser.
42 years wiser.
Wiser and whiter.
I've seen God cross paths with people at the right time in the right season that you can glean from, that you can, I hope that's the right term.
Yeah.
I like my words. That you can just sort of like get inspired by, because they're walking in some way, and you might have a chain in that area in your life, and they could bring freedom. I think of these guys as helping me drop some chains in my life and inspiring me. So I think we crossed paths, or even the walking street in Pattaya, for a reason. God's gonna do that. He does that all the time. He will be doing that for you. So watch for those people that you're crossing paths with, just the right time for just the right reason.
Yeah. Amen. Listen,
No
plan
plan
B.
B.
Yes, cheapers. Nope. Anyway, I have a plan B story, but I'll not talk about that. I'm just gonna pray. And then, listen, if you've dug in this long, I genuinely really appreciate it. I never ask for help on these things, but share away, do whatever you want to do, because it is important. It is important that we all know that we can't count ourselves out of this. We are all on the same team. And just because someone stands up on a stage, or someone does this, or someone looks like they do this, or whatever like that there is this hierarchical system does not exist and should not exist in the kingdom. Christ is coming back for his bride, right? He's not coming back for the eye or the hand or the foot alone. We're all on the same page, and that's really, really important, because we actually live in a society today where that's not the case. We have superstars, we have all of these things. We go, oh, well, I'm not like them, I'm not doing this, I'm not whatever. You do you in your world. You find your journey in the kingdom. You find, because you're going to stand before the Lord one day. That's it. Not you and me, not you and Krick, not you and your mates or whatever like that. We're going to stand before the Lord just by ourselves. And what a glorious day that will be. And so, Father, I thank you for every single person that has dared to even lend an ear to this. Thank you that you have nothing but love and grace and mercy for them. And I pray, our prayer is that they would find their story, their God written story over their lives, over their families, over their friends, over their communities, their cities, their countries, their nations. God, I pray that it would spread, that their story would have ripple effects that they will never know until maybe that when they see whatever it is that in eternity. And God, we remember brothers and sisters across the world that are on the front lines in these environments, in some of the darkest areas on earth. And thank you that where the darkness is, the light always shines brighter. This is always for your glory, your fame, and your renown, and nothing else. And everyone says amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Forgive us for whatever sound issues there may be, whatever. God's good. He's for you. And when he is for you, nothing can successfully stand against
You.
Done. Peace.